Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Take Two. A very good series premiere. I really enjoyed this first episode, obviously setting up everything, obviously learning about both our main protagonists, both Sam and Eddie, who are basically like an actress and a PI. I didn't know what his whole situation was. I knew he was law enforcement. I didn't know he was a cop or not. It seems like he's been a PI the entire time. I'd assume he's had a cop background, but just from the way Sam talks about his past, like that, it's relevant to the main overarching plot. At least for now, it seems like he has been a PI at least for a good amount of time. He's kind of known as like the city's greatest PI, so I'd assume he has some police background, but. Nevertheless, obviously, learning about Sam and her mishaps and stuff like that, it's actually kind of sad. It seems like, and I guess you could call that kind of like the Hollywood life and stuff like that, but the fact of the matter is, it seems like she only kind of had the whole losing herself was because at the time she admits like during the red carpet events and stuff like that, which kind of blew up. It's because her show got canceled after like 8 seasons because she's been working on for like 8 years, which I was like, oh man, well, so if you got that'd be suck if it canceled after one season. It's like, no, it was after a long, which, I don't know whether that's supposed to be an inside joke or not, because there's like two things in this episode that kind of make me, well, if you know, like, the series that, like, one of the executive producers to this show they're connected to Castle, so, which is, like, obviously this has a very, like, similar feel to it, but, I'm about to say, was Castle canceled after its 7th season, like, before its 8th season, didn't it? I don't actually remember. So that's why I was kind of wondering if that was like a slight nod to that potentially. I don't know. I guess the argument could still be made. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Yeah, because it's like 8 years. It could be about 7 seasons. So it's like, that's interesting. Like, I wonder that. And there's also, he's like, oh, next time I'll handcuff you to make sure you don't get out of the car. What happened with Beckett and Castle's first case, she ended up handcuffing him to inside the car. So it's just, I don't know. I don't know whether those are supposed to be nods. I'm taking them as nods. So, nevertheless, obviously, Sam is played by Rachel Bilson. She's done a lot of stuff. I think the most recent thing she's done is Heart of Dixie, I think. And Eddie, I remember her from somewhere. I just can't quite place it. I don't remember what it is I know him from. I think it's a cop show, but I could be 100% wrong. But then what got me was like, Mick, the ME. I saw the name Jordan and G, but I always forget Jordan's last name. I was like, wait, is that who I think it is? And he pops up, it's freaking Felix from Orphan Black. I was like, I was like, that's so good. Also, it seems like he's doing, because like Jordan doesn't actually have that accent in real life, like the one he does for Felix and he's doing for this. He doesn't actually have that in real life. At least I don't think he does. I've heard him talk a few times. It didn't seem like he did. But nevertheless, I was just like, that's so cool. But nevertheless, I'm getting all over the place. So I do apologize. So basically, Sam's shadowing him because she's getting a new role as a PI. So obviously, once again, can't help but make the similarities between this and Castle. Obviously, there are differences. But nevertheless, the case they're working on is a missing person. Her name's Lynette. Their dad came, and I really like that twist when it turns out like, oh yeah, like I didn't see that coming. I was like, I said, yeah, your dad sent us. What about your family? She said, what are you talking about? It's like, your dad, he hired us. It's like, that's impossible. My dad died years ago. It's like, oh, I was thinking at that point, I was like, oh, he's supposed to be Deacon. It's like, no, he's just a hired gun. But nevertheless, basically this all revolves around her ex, well, not ex, it's her boyfriend, Ricky, who's kind of he's kind of caught up in the criminal world and stuff like that. It's, he's kind of like the bad boy. It's almost kind of like I guess a best comparison. Maybe they made this comparison. Did they? I don't remember if they made the comparison in the show. It's like kind of like a West Side Story situation. I feel like they probably said something like that. But nevertheless, it's kind of actually a sweet story. But sadly, Eddie ended up dying. We ended up learning from Lynette. The reason why that happened is because he was actually on his way to, like, he knew the only way he could get away from this life because he worked with such a crime boss like Deacon that he knew he would have to get away. And the only way he could do that was by revealing his identity because no one knows what he looks like. But he's been running things forever. And because of that, he ended up dying. And Lynette was kind of going out for revenge, going to try and track him down, even if it meant dying. Like, she would, we don't really know if she actually has any other outside family. Just because her dad's going doesn't mean that she doesn't still have her mom, maybe some siblings, maybe other extended family. Never really gets into it, but for her, she was so set on revenge because like the man she loves died. They're trying to run away together, get past like all of this. I guess you can make the comparison of West Side Story / Romeo and Juliet, which even West Side Story is kind of like a variant on like the Romeo and Juliet story anyway, just kind of two people from two different worlds caught in this war and stuff like that, you know. So it's just kind of sad that things kind of worked out that way. And I really appreciate it because it might be an actress, but Sam is actually really good at it. Even Eddie kind of has to admit it. Like, the fact is, it's like, oh yeah, this guy, like, who Lynette rented the room from, it's like, yeah, you look at that dude, like, obviously she's like, you know, after playing characters for so long, like, oh yeah, you know, you have to kind of, like, body language speaks volumes. So for her, it's like, because she's kind of studied characters and stuff like that, like, she could tell the dude just the way he was like handling his body that he was like, I was like, that's such a good detail. Like, you aren't just some bumbling actress, you're really actually good at this. She did ask the right questions, but it's that typical thing you see in cop shows. Never make promises because we don't know if we're going to like be able to come through in the end, and that's just going to dash people's hopes. So you don't want to bring them up. It's like, I'll try to do my best, sure, but never make promises that you're not 100% sure that you can keep, you know. So but other than that, like, she's shown herself to be very intuitive. She looked at the tattoo, was able to figure out the Lynette and Ricky situation. I figured it out. I was like, oh man, they're lovers and stuff like that. Like, I felt like she's very sharp. But obviously Eddie's there to kind of balance her out. Like, when she kind of goes like, oh yeah, this is how things are handled in TV. It's like, no, this is how things are handled in reality. Which obviously is a little poking fun at the way a lot of TV shows end. It's like, oh yeah, we got all this science equipment and computers and stuff that lets us zoom in. It's like, no, that technology doesn't really exist. That's all in TV shows. This is how we actually have to handle it. Even like being able to see like the number she's dialing and stuff like that. Just like looking at the placement of her hand on the phone, I was like, that's pretty good for both of them being able to do that. But I love the whole conversation of like, oh yeah, it's at an escort. It's like, oh, but we don't even know where it is. He's like, I know. It's like, oh, what? It's like, well, you know, I thought, you know, handsome as you are, like, you really wouldn't know. It's like, oh, you think it's, you know, beneath me or something like that. You know, it's kind of sad, isn't it? It's like, you know, sometimes it's just, you know, being the modern day cowboy, you know, sometimes you just need a woman's touch, and then you can see her kind of getting sucked in, and he's like, or maybe I'm just a PI and I've had to like chase leads there multiple times. She's just like, oh, okay. And I was like, that was good, pulling her in like that. I thought that was nice. I figured he was joking, but there was a part of me was like, oh, is he actually being a little sincere? It's like, no, he's just messing with me. I even love the line of him being like, because she's like, oh man, some of my producers kind of live around this area. Like, some producers I know. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be kind of awkward if you ended up running into them? And then she pauses for a second, and then she kind of puts on shades and hats. She's like, didn't want to take any chances. So she's already tried to repair her reputation. So like, the last thing she needed was that on top of it, which is like, once again, like, going back to her situation is sad. I didn't really go into it, but it's like, it is kind of sad. Like, understandably, it's like, you're a part of the show, it gets canceled, it's become a big part of your life. That on top of that, her fiance dumped her while she was at the red carpet, I think. Exactly. So she got a little plastered. And I mean, like I said, we don't like, I'd assume her checking herself in for, you know, to sober up. I don't know whether that's 100%. Well, it's probably maybe like a court order thing and stuff like that. But it's like, I don't know if she's had stuff in the past where she had to deal with that, and it just came out very nasty in that particular moment of just kind of like everything, like life basically shitting on her, you know. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to think about. Like, but even when this all being said and done, like, even Eddie does have his past. It kind of makes him a little reluctant and I guess almost cynical in certain regards about how he handled this case and stuff like that, because it's like, oh, Lynette's going to handle things on her own. She's going to get herself killed. But for Eddie, it finds out like, oh yeah, like, things aren't working out for the movie that Sam is trying to make. The financiers kind of backed out of it just because of, I guess, still they weren't 100% sure on her. Maybe just stuff popped up here and there about what she was up to, or maybe they just kind of like, they're like, nah, there's too much bad publicity kind of out there about her coming out of sobriety, you know. So maybe that was just kind of a big no on that regard. They didn't want to take any chances on her because they figured she might flake or something. I don't know. But for Eddie, it's like, oh, I don't even get to get paid after. She's like, and that pissed her off because it's like, oh, that's all you care about. It's just a slip of the tongue. I think it's just a situation. I think he meant specifically about their particular situation. I don't think it's just that Eddie just cares about the money. Maybe in that moment he did. Maybe he was just being a dick and that's all he cared about. But it seems like basically 3 years ago on a job, he wasn't able to protect someone, so he doesn't take big cases. He takes these smaller cases, so... But I even love the fact that she gave him a speech from one of her movies. I was like, the fact that this speech sounded a little too rehearsed, I'm like, it sounds exactly like it's from not one of her movies, one of her TV shows. We don't even know she's actually done a lot of movies. We know specifically the TV show Hot Suspect, which once again can't help but make comparisons, because let's not forget what Beckett's whole thing was in Castle's books. She was Nikki Heat, which got turned into a movie which didn't do well, if I remember correctly. So that was the whole thing. So I don't know if that's supposed to be, like I said, it's just like, that there's probably even more stuff that I'm not picking up that's kind of like sprinkled into this. So other people in the show, I'm getting all over on myself. I do apologize. I need to actually focus on the main. I'm focused on so many other things rather than the main plot of the episode. But it turns out, the one behind all this Deacon is actually. I was like, oh, he's a cop. Oh, that's going to be interesting. It's like, no. It turns out he's not directly a cop. He's actually a Superior Court judge. I recognize that actor who plays the judge, and like I can't place him. I mean, I don't know his name. I can place him because he's been in so many things. Like, he's one of those actors you see a lot. I mean, I literally just saw him, was it last week in an episode of Colony? So, but nevertheless, I was actually kind of surprised that kind of got wrapped up like it did, like Deacon being taken care of. I mean, he was arrested. I mean, he has a lot of pull, so I mean, that doesn't mean diddly squat. But the fact of the matter is, I thought like he was going to be like the overarching villain of the season. I mean, still could possibly be. But the fact of the matter is, I thought his identity was going to stay hidden and be like a season finale. But it was like, no, he's taken care of, but for now. So, but he's got his eyes set on Eddie, potentially Sam. Didn't say anything about Sam, but obviously Eddie's the one that's got his most of his attention. But I love how everything was resolved in a sense, like her going undercover, pretending to be someone. I just love her being like, man, I used to be afraid of going home, but man, I'll be such a cougar when the time comes. It's like, who talks about themselves like that? That's so interesting. But like her thing, like obviously Eddie kind of gives her the sign by like referencing like the TV show, and she kicks the gun and it hits the dude in the face and gave Eddie time to take him down. Which even she's like, oh my God, that was so awesome. I was like, I mean, yeah, you were pretty good, but that was me. I mean, you've been handling this for a long time, but that was me. It worked out. It was so good. So I thought that's kind of nice. And I like what happened between her and Lynette. Lynette's like, thank you. She's like, no. It's all Ricky. He's the one that kind of put everything together. But she's like, yeah, but you're the one who got him justice, and hugs her. So it kind of made her feel good because this whole situation, even when things kind of didn't seem like they were working out for this whole situation, she felt bad because it's like she actually cared about Lynette. This wasn't just about, working for a role. It's just like she actually got invested in the case. She actually cared about everything. At the end, they do kind of go their separate ways, but Eddie does call her back just because it's like they got new clients, but those new clients only want the both of them. They're just not just there for Eddie. They want Sam too, because like this duo together like took down like a huge case by themselves. So that obviously getting the show rolling, which is very interesting on many different levels. Like obviously kind of like does make you wonder what's going to happen about the whole like, well, the movie kind of fell through, but that doesn't mean she still can't take what she's learning now and eventually finance the movie maybe herself or other people, other producers and other people come along to kind of do it. So, which is so interesting because I feel like I don't remember it coming up as much in Castle when you actually think about it. Like it didn't come up that often in cases being like, oh wow, you're Richard Castle. It's like, no, but in this episode they're like, oh wow, you're Sam. It's like, it's so interesting to me. Like, obviously that's going to be, I feel like going to be an even bigger thing going forward. I guess it's also because it's just people know her from TV show. There's obviously going to be probably the bad publicity part of things. So just like that red carpet event that kind of made things kind of get a little problematic for her career and stuff like that. So, but like I said, I feel like that might be potentially more, maybe because there's kind of a different level of celebrity going on here, whether it's like an author compared to a movie star, I'm a TV star, movie star, and a well-known actress, so maybe that'll play a different role. So like I said, I'd be interested to see where that kind of takes her going forward. There is also the situation with what I'm assuming is her agent, Sid, who has a connection to Eddie, which apparently they used to date, or there was some semblance of a relationship, even though he's like, yeah, the last time we saw each other, you told me to go to hell. Even the fact is, as like, oh, you owe me a favor. It's like, well, what does that necessarily entail? What's that all about? So that's interesting. That she was able to kind of set this all up, kind of make it's just kind of interesting to me. And I'd assume it's kind of going to be interesting because Sid's probably going to be a pretty recurring character in the show. I think it's going to be interesting and see what that kind of ends up turning into. Maybe kind of find out more about her and Eddie's past. Eddie is currently dating Detective Rollins, who's probably going to be like the main police connection. Like obviously, like I said, it's just not like they're probably going to go a little, as Sam says, they're the modern cowboys, PIs. So it's like you kind of skirt outside the law a little bit. So it's definitely going to be interesting seeing that perspective of just like, I feel like, I'm sure there are, but I don't think I've watched many where it's like non-cop like crime dramas in the sense of like, oh, you're not directly connected to the law. You're kind of your own thing. Like I said, it comes up from time to time. There's probably some stuff here and there that I'm not really thinking about right now. There's some in the top of my head, but it's like, it's never, like, I don't think there's anything I'm like very familiar with that's kind of like that. Most things are like, oh, you're following a certain police unit and stuff like that. This time we're following a PI investigation. I mean, obviously the best comparison, like top one that kind of comes to my head right now is like Jessica Jones, but that's not really a cop show, but it's more like the PI investigation type of thing, kind of doing your own thing alongside the law and stuff like that. But nevertheless, so I'm interested to see what the whole Detective Rollins situation goes going forward. It's got to be a little, I mean, it's not even complicated because it's like, well, it's not like there's a whole situation like, oh yeah, he works with you. I mean, you work together sometime, but it's not like he works with you. The whole like, oh yeah, department and relationships probably being a big no-no. It's like, oh, that's no longer an issue. I am curious, like, well, because typically with these situations, it's kind of like, well, typically it's like partners in these situations, that being Sam and Eddie, typically end up together. But it's like, well, he's in a relationship, well, whatever him and Rollins want to call their thing. They might not want to call it labels. They might just be like, oh, let's keep it super casual. So there's that. Sam's currently not dating one, but obviously, her ex-fiance is probably most likely going to pop up in the story in some shape or form on some case or something like that. Or Sam's going to have to deal with the fact that he's got a new lady, and it's like, something like that typically will probably be coming up. So also, it seems like this is a small investigation team because now it only includes Eddie, Sam, and kind of the tech dude, Berto. He's kind of the one, obviously, like, they're not making enough money for it to be like, oh yeah, we got all the resources. They got limited resources, but it seems like they're able to kind of make do. So it's going to be interesting going forward with like a 3-man squad, which I feel, once again, kind of like smaller team and stuff like that. Typically it doesn't happen. Usually there's quite a few, but it's definitely going to be, I'm very interested to kind of continue watching on, see what else the show has in store. Like, obviously, like I said, this case is kind of done, but still, like I said, the Deacon thing, kind of feel like, well, there's probably going to be a lot more going forward. So I'm very interested to kind of see like Sam and Eddie as they kind of get through cases and what kind of cases they get and what surprises the show has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.